Welcome, gardeners. Today we're going to be introducing ourselves to the garden at Moberly Arts and Cultural Center, or MACC, and hearing from its current caretaker, Lori Snyder. You'll see photos that Lori and I have taken within the past year. I really encourage you to look up all the plants and insects that Lori mentions today and really become acquainted with them. They're fantastic friends for us to have in our gardens. Lori will tell you all about her specialties, so I'll just quickly say that the gardening practices utilized at MACC have been a huge inspiration for our vision as we develop Sunset Community Garden. I'll talk about that in the companion to this video, Learning Sunset, so make sure to check that out. Before Lori gets started, I'd just like to apologize for only including the anglicized versions of the nation names around the area of so-called Vancouver. It's my first time making a video, and I hope to learn and improve going forward and hopefully be able to fix that in future videos. So without further ado, I'll let Lori get started. Enjoy her storytelling, and I'll see you at the end of the video.
Hello, my friends. My name is Lori Snyder, and I'm an educator on wild, native, and medicinal plants. And I'm here today to share some of my experiences, what I've been learning and discovering for myself in this time where it's so important to be outside and us to put our hands back in the earth and to discover how that experiences actually shape us, but also help us to be healthy, right? Having the sun, getting the vitamin D, the little beautiful microorganisms in the soil actually impact our physiology, the chemicals being released in the brain and the gut. Especially we want to get those microorganisms, from those fresh carrots or beautiful camas bulbs or whatever it is that we might be harvesting out of the soil. We actually want to get that inside us to create a diversity here in our gut. And then, of course, I always say to people, it's not bad weather, it's bad gear. So we need to be outside in all kinds of weather. And, the rain has negative ions, how that impacts us. And, of course, in the summer, all summer this year, 2020, I've been running around in my bare feet and touching the earth, which has this beautiful electromagnetic frequency that actually helps to heal the body. You can Google grounding and you can find out more about that. And seeing the night sky. I ask my students, I go into a lot of schools and teach, and I'm like, have you seen the Milky Way? And they're kind of looking at me like, who's the Milky Way? So we need to, turn off our lights. And wow, that just made me think, lights actually have a huge impact on our insect population. In fact, the research is starting to show how lights actually can affect the reproductive cycle of certain beetles. And that confuses them, right? Because they don't realize it's a light. It's like responding to sunlight. So, really, the more we understand our living world and we're witnessing her incredible beauty and her intelligence, we can put ourselves back into that web of life. We can be what we might call egocentric, or we can get back to being ecocentric. And that's how, our ancestors were walking, knowing that, I am part of the system, the living system. I collect the seeds, I tend the soil, I harvest and prepare and share that bounty, that abundance that is so life-giving from our beautiful mother, the earth. So what I wanted to do today with Leah's guidance here is to talk a little bit about the Medicine Wheel Garden at Moberly Arts and Cultural Centre. And this beautiful garden has a variety of sort of themes to it. And it was first installed around 2013 by Laurie Weidenhammer, who is also known as Madame Bee Speaker. So Laurie she got funding and support from the Vancouver Parks Board to create this beautiful medicine wheel garden. So there are 4 quadrants, with various native plants and sort of having that color scheme there of white, black, red, and yellow. And then she also put in 5 beds for growing food. And then she worked with the children at an elementary school, which is Moberly Elementary. Over time, based on her, teaching so much about pollinators and bees in particular, that she ended up adding another section to that. So we have a fairly large pollinator swath. And then, I guess it's been 3 years now that Laurie asked me, or Moberly asked if I'd be interested in taking that over as Laurie went on to other projects. And because I've studied herbology and aromatherapy and permaculture, I noticed at the bottom of that site, it has a bit of a slope onto the sidewalk, that through the winter months it would be pooled with a lot of water. So in permaculture, which is becoming more of a understood term, but still a lot of people haven't necessarily heard of permaculture. And I guess I was introduced to it maybe 10 years ago, maybe 15 years ago. And now it's more common when I mention that word, people are like, oh, I know what you're talking about. So with permaculture, what it is a system of recognizing and witnessing what is the site telling us, what weeds are there to tell us something about the quality of the soil. How is the sunlight coming across that site? Where is the wind coming from that might be drying the site out? How does the water move that we might want to capture that water? So just really looking at what does it tell us? What do we already see growing there? And then what else can we add into it that is going to be successful for everyone? So as I mentioned, because of the way the slope comes down and this pooling of water, I got permission from the Parks Board to terrace it down. So it made like 4 steps down. And what I did was we dug out the step, turned that soil, or it was mostly grass, turned it over, and then filled up that trough with the bark mulch. So bark mulch is amazing because one, it's going to hold water, and the other is with bark mulch, we can actually inoculate it with mushrooms. So we can be growing our own mushrooms in our garden through our pathways with the bark mulch. And the other thing, I just remembered this morning, which is important about the mushrooms, is that when they sporate, so when they produce their spores, they actually become food for insects. As long as we have insects, we have us. And unfortunately, research, or maybe fortunately, research is actually showing us that our insect population is decreasing. And of course, they're like a keystone species. They're feeding everything else up the food chain. So insects are really important in our garden. And I did some teachings yesterday, and I was pointing out in this particular garden at a schoolyard that had salal, which is one of our native plants. I was showing the students that a lot of the leaves had been eaten. So I was reminding them that this is actually an indicator that the insects are on that site and that this site is actually quite healthy, which of course is feeding the birds. And we could see that evidence. We could hear them. We saw flickers coming around. We heard the hummingbird. And the teacher was quite happy because she's like, oh, my garden's got lots of evidence that the insects are there. And she said, I kept thinking I need to get rid of them, and now I understand. So it's about an understanding. And really, we could say that permaculture is based on Indigenous ways of knowing. Because as what Indigenous people do is they observe what's going on and recognize that they're part of the system. So what are our roles? How do we caretake and create these practices of reciprocity? So I'm taking care of these beautiful plants, they're taking care of me. I'm taking care of the insects, they're taking care of me. Remember, they can actually be our future food source, one, but also the birds that come, the bats that come. And who doesn't love to witness and listen to birds? And recently I discovered that birds actually taught us music. So birds have a language of communication, but a lot of their songs are actually songs. And they actually love when we're outside playing music and dancing and drumming, for them to witness us and get to enjoy that and share their song back with us. So Moberly, what else can I tell you about it? So the native plants, so incredibly important. I cannot stress that enough. And what I've witnessed as I travel around the city and the Lower Mainland, going into community centers and schools and wherever I might get invited, parks, to teach, I'm not seeing a lot of native plants. And what we're learning, and you can check out Linda Gilkinson, amazing master gardener who lives over on Salt Spring. She's also has a PhD in entomology, which is the study of insects. Linda has reminded us that we want to have at least 50% native plants in our gardens or in our landscape. So it's not about pulling out your ornamental plants or that, that special hybrid rose that you so love and maybe the tree that it originates in your own hometown or your own country. It's really about us adding in the native plants. So we have the native insects, we have the native bees, we have the native birds. And through that we can access the native foods and the native medicines. David Suzuki's wife, Tara Collis, shared one time when I heard her speak the meaning of indigenous. She said, rooted to the earth. That's a good reminder. How rooted are we to our mother? And what comes to me is us growing and eating the foods of the lands that we call our home. I'm here on the lands of the Squamish, Tsleil-Waututh, and the Musqueam people, and I'm so grateful for their ability to hear the teachings that come from our older brothers and sisters and from the animal kingdom, and that they were in a deep relationship with their living world because they were rooted, because they were in that place of relationship, reciprocity, respect, recognizing their responsibility, and of course having deep reverence for what sustains them, us, really. So the native plants, we want to, and I keep going back to that, how important they are. What I want to tell you about that site is originally, prior to 2013, it was just grass. And grass is beautiful. I love the color green. Color green actually hits our heart chakra, right? That really, when we go out in nature and we see all this beautiful shades of green, it just makes us feel really good. The challenge with grasses are, and something that I'm reminding everyone is, we get imprinted with certain ideologies. So grass became sort of a symbol of status, or how tidy and neat my yard was. And what we discovered is there are actual deserts for insects, especially the native bees. So we really, just like in the human family, we have this diversity of other cultures. What we really want to have is diversity of plants and life around us. So in our grass, if you've got dandelion growing, chickweed, plantain, clover, whether it's white or red, who are some other beautiful plants, yarrow. These are, oh, English daisy. These are important pollinator plants. So that creates this diversity. You still have this beautiful green lawn. Maybe you've got some yellow flowers now coming up every once in a while. So we can get a beautiful variety of color in there, but knowing those beautiful pollinators are being fed. And here's the other thing that I recently learned is, the question is, we can all probably identify a bumblebee or a honeybee, but could you identify a miner's bee, a leaf cutter? There are, I think, 8 or more native bees that, grow here or live in this part of the world. And what I discovered is that little bees have little tongues, which need little flowers. And so that wild plantain actually produces a little flower for those bees. And it's actually becoming a host plant for various types of butterflies. So it's an incredibly good guest to this land, because this is not a plant that is native to this part, but has naturalized and has something to offer. Food and medicine for us, but also food for our pollinators. What happened with that site by putting in a variety of native plants? So we've got Nootka rose, flowering red currant, wild plum, Saskatoon berry, Oregon grape, salmonberry, salal nodding onion, evergreen huckleberry. I'm just trying to think of all the plants just off the top of my head that are in that beautiful garden. What happened is it became an oasis. It's alive. It is full of so much activity. I counted 9 different species of bees this last summer, which was so exciting. I haven't learned to identify all my bees yet, but I was like, wow, this really exists. And here's the thing about our native bees. They come out in colder temperatures than our honeybee. So we know a lot about our honeybees, and we recognize they're very important, but there's a lot of other bees that are also just as important for pollination. And, we had a cold spring. So the honeybees are not going to be out, but those native bees were out. As soon as that temperature hit that right degree, then they were out doing what they do well. So as I mentioned, we're growing a little bit of food in there. Not a lot, more, I'm really sort of focusing a bit more on medicines. We're adding more of our pollinator plants. And what's important about pollinators is it's not just the nectar plants. We also have to think about the host plants, and those are where they're laying their eggs. And then with that terrace down, what I wanted to do is to put way more berries on that terrace. So I did get some blueberries planted, some raspberries, some thornless blackberries, some Oregon grape, and somebody gifted me some, I think they were Haskap berries. So what I want to do is really fill that up, because, thinking about growing food, one of the most expensive items that we buy in the grocery store are the berries. And they are superfoods. Color is an important part in our diet. And when we're having the darker color berries, they're full of what we call anthocyanins, which are known as antioxidants. And so some of the research says that they scavenge these free radicals in our body that may actually be causing cancer. So why wouldn't we want to eat them if that's going to help to keep the body healthy? But not only that, they taste amazing. They're so incredibly delicious. And we were sharing yesterday some salal jam that I had made. And the teacher was saying, wow, the complexity, the depth, the woodiness, like she's trying to find those words to describe it. And she says, you know, more flavor than blueberries. And I was letting her know that a lot of our blueberries are hybrid, and that our actual wild blueberries are blue all the way through. So a hybrid blueberry is going to be white on the inside. So again, we lose value sometimes when we're modifying our plants, even though they might, you know, get to market better, or, you know, stay on the shelf longer, or transport, or whatever that might be. But native or wild plants actually have a lot more nutritional value than cultivated plants. And again, I'll talk about that more when we're talking about weeds. So I just want to quickly share a little story. We were working in the garden one beautiful spring afternoon, and we could hear the birds, and you know, we took that time to listen to them and acknowledge them and just appreciate their beautiful song. And then we got on to doing the task at hand. And then at some point, someone looked up and they said, "Look, there's 2 hawks above us." And I was like, "Oh, wow, beautiful." And then I was like, "Can you hear the birds?" There wasn't any sound. So we actually might have been listening to some of the warning, because little birds will warn each other as the hawks are traveling for those birds to be quiet. And the reason the hawks came to that garden, because they know the little birds are now living there. We have a resident hummingbird, and she's such a delight to witness. I saw a beautiful little yellow bird late in the summer this year. I had no idea who it was, and she was so incredibly beautiful. So that's a joy. It is such a joy when we're growing our native plants, when we're growing our medicines, and those medicines that are medicines for us are actually medicines for bees and pollinators and birds. What an incredible joy, and really just want to inspire you to be outside, grow some food, grow some medicine, and witness that magnificence that is around us, this wonder of life, and for us to just keep, cultivating our gratitude that we're here right now, and that we can really truly make a difference in our living world.
Thank you so much, Lori, for your insight and knowledge and just appreciation of all the different kinds of life that we see when we put in such a beautiful and vital garden like the one that's at MACC. It really gives me goosebumps to think about, how much different that landscape is than before Lori Weidenhammer put in the garden there. And I'm so grateful to have the opportunity to witness that life and to help caretake it. It's really an incredible position that we're put in, where we can help community gardens and gardens within the community grow. So as I mentioned, there's a companion to this video all about Sunset Community Garden and what's been going on there in the past year. So make sure to check that out. And otherwise, have fun getting your hands dirty. I'll see you in the next one.
That was awesome, Lori.
That was it.
Oh, I get goosebumps.
Okay.